What is up, guys? It's Dave, Duncan and Kyle back from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from experimental metalcore band Wounded Touch. The band's new album AMERICANXIETY will be released on March 4th via Smartpunk Reocrds.
Great name for an album.
It really is, isn't it? Like, that just catches your eye straight away. AMERICANXIETY. AMERICANXIETY.
Yeah, that and the glass and the artwork kind of catches your eye as well.
Absolutely, yes. If you have never heard of Wounded Touch before, they are a Michigan-based band consisting of Nick Holland on vocals, Jeremy Schultz on drums, Kyle Maddock on guitar, Mike Poshidley on guitar, and Ben Jensen on bass. AMERICANXIETY serves as the follow-up to the band's 2019 EP From Day Zero Forward. Recorded with Andy Nelson at Bricktop Studio.
Nice.
Who's worked with all sorts of bands.
Everyone.
Yeah. Not even going to list them, there's too many. AMERICANXIETY centres around isolation, loss and the shared trauma in the American society. Much of the lyrical content also extends around Holland's experiences as a paramedic during the height of the pandemic and the passing of loved ones. Okay, so I must admit I was really keen to hear this. I think I messaged you guys after hearing one of the singles, and I was like, okay, I think I might need this album in my life. The track I heard was Condolences and Autumn Nights, which is track 2 on the album. And I think, look, when I heard that track, more than anything, I think I was kind of drawn to the kind of volatility of it. It's kind of like, remember when you heard like Glassjaw for the first time?
Yes.
And you could kind of feel how like emotionally charged it was. Like I kind of felt like that a little bit, and kind of similar to Daryl Palumbo. I felt like the vocalist Nick Holland is a very like believable delivery. He has like very like, his range is incredible. Like he moves like from these like kind of guttural growls to like a mid-range, almost kind of hardcore type roar, then into these really like abrasive screams. And that like the kind of higher register, it might not be to everyone's taste. It's quite kind of jarring sounding. But I kind of liked it for a couple of reasons. Firstly, that particular tone, it reminded me of a guy called Krumi Bjornvinsen from an Icelandic hardcore band called Minus.
Yes.
Jesus
Christ Bobby.
Exactly, yeah. They put out Jesus Christ Bobby, and the tone that he has on that album was very similar to this. It's very, very visceral, you know, but the intensity of it just kind of kept me hooked into what was going on. That track, there's also a little bit of melody on the track as well, which was really cool. It's that very kind of like Poison the Well type kind of melody to it, which I'm a huge fan of. Tear from the Red is one of my favourite albums from that kind of like early 2000s metalcore sound. So it has a lot of versatility. I was really impressed with the vocals on this, and musically it's just as varied. It does lean a lot into that kind of like early 2000s metalcore sound. There's hints of bands like Remember and Never or On Broken Wings, which is
Every Time I Die.
I was just going to say that actually.
Whole sections that I was like, that's fucking 2001 era Every Time I Die, out 100%. Of nowhere, like absolutely out of nowhere.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, you've got little they kind of dip into like parts of like kind of more traditional hardcore. You hear that on like Enemy Chords. There's little bits of like kind of Screamo and post-hardcore in there as well. And like you say, they've got that kind of like early Every Time I Die vibe as well. So there's like, for an album that's only 26 minutes, there's quite a lot to get your teeth into. Like they've packed a lot into this album. It's also like something I love is just to hear bands still using movie samples in their albums. Like,
right, yeah. When you close out your first song with a sample from my favourite, one of my favourite, in fact, my favourite horror movie of all time, The Thing. Duncan goes swing. So yeah.
Yeah, that just like, when I heard that quote from The Thing, and there's like other stuff from like Killing Them Softly and stuff as well, that just kind of makes me happy to hear bands still doing that. It's something you don't hear that often anymore, probably down to like the whole copyright thing and stuff, but I really enjoy it when I hear bands still kind of playing with that. I think like after I've listened to this quite a few times. It's only 26 minutes, and I think if anything, like any kind of, it's not really a criticism, but if anything, I'd like to hear more of that melody. That kind of melody they had on Condolences and Autumn Nights, and also there's some on the closing track as well. Yeah,
the last track, Dude can sing like a motherfucker.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that element of the band's sound. I think like maybe 2 more tracks, maybe with a little bit of that on it, I think would make this album even more memorable. But at the same time, like their choice to only add it a couple of times was also quite clever as well, because it makes those tracks really stand out, and it kind of left me wanting more of it. So, you know, you could look at it both ways. Production is really good as well. Andy Nelson's done a really good job. It's very authentic sounding. It's quite punchy. It's very abrasive, but it's got a bit of that kind of throwback feel as well, which I'm a kind of huge fan of. I enjoyed this. I was looking forward to it. It kind of scratched that kind of nostalgic itch that I had, but there's also like enough of a kind of like modern feel for me to kind of get excited about what they're going to do next as well. Duncan, what did you think?
It's interesting because I hadn't thought of Menace, which is interesting because like I think me and you were the only 2 people that ever listened to Menace in the whole of Scotland, and we were big fans. The first listen to this album did not go well.
Oh, right.
Right, and it was mostly down to the higher register vocal that you mentioned before, which instantly kind of just made me wince when I heard it, which is its purpose, to be fair. By the time I'd got through into listening to the first track, because it is the first vocal you hear on that first track, is this really high-pitched, really kind of nails on a chalkboard sort of sound. By the time I got through the album and then came back to it a second time, like you say, 26 minutes, very easy to do that, I'd completely acclimated to it, so it wasn't an issue anymore at all. And then actually I found myself kind of liking it. I think it adds an element to this that makes it instantly memorable, because straight away it sounds different from everything else. And you mentioned a huge group of bands that are apt to be mentioned for sure, but what is interesting is the vocal range that he has, and all 3 registers didn't actually really sound like any vocalist that I could put my finger on from that era, which I kind of loved. It was like they're putting their own spin on things. My only kind of gripe with this album, for the most part, I'll go back through and tell you like the huge amount of things I love about it, but my only biggest gripe that kind of stuck with me here is I think it feels, I mean, they're experimental, it does feel a bit too chaotic at times.
Right.
I think on a couple of tracks, not often though, there's one element where I'm like, oh right, we're just like, it's like we're just pushing everything to the fullest we can, and sometimes the impact of that is lessened by the chaos beforehand. Sometimes like a really memorable kind of, destructive and volatile part of a song is destructive and volatile because the elements around it aren't. And I think Wounded Touch just seemed to keep building on top of bits that constantly... You mentioned Glassjaw. Glassjaw, to me, the first time I heard them was, it almost sounded like at any point it could just snap and sound shit. And somehow they managed to keep it right on that razor's edge, like all the way through it. And it's the same here. I think there's so much of this is on the edge of what you could class as experimental and what you could class as just chaos. And chaos is great in some respects, but not always when it comes to songwriting. There needs to be something that pulls it back in, and they managed to toe that line. I think it's only maybe once or twice I personally felt they went over that line. The stuff that I loved about it, I think the production's fucking great. I think they've got riffs for days. I think, like I say, the vocals are a huge standout element for me. Fuck knows how he does this live. Like to maintain a register live. Like when you'd like to let people out there know, when you do metal vocals, you can capture high range stuff very early in your recording, and then your voice gradually gets deeper the more aggressive you get, because that register goes. The fact that he keeps going back up and hitting that, I would love to see that live because it kind of blew my mind. It also reminded me a little bit of, remember the first time you heard like either Slaves on Dope or the Agony Scene?
Oh,
and both those vocalists had like just like screechy like things, and it fit over there. And the Agony Scene were another band that kind of kept coming back when I heard it. Like it was like not the thrashier bits, but there was certain elements of just like when you heard it, you just like, this is what anger sounds like distilled in a recording. It's definitely through here. Like yourself, I think that the biggest crime on this is maybe not enough melody. You are right. They use too much of it. It's a gimmick. Doesn't use too much of it. Kind of makes you want more. However, there are sections in some of these songs where I'm like, that melody, melody here. This is where you put it. And they were like, no, fuck you, Duncan. This is what we're doing instead. And so it's against the grain that way, and it kind of kept me guessing. At no point in any of the listening to this did I feel like I knew where the next bit was going to go. And that's also kind of cool. There's something kind of Dillinger-esque about that, where you just genuinely don't know what the fuck is going to hit you next. It's a weird one. There's a lot that I really liked about this. I do think they go maybe one step beyond once or twice. But all the component parts are really, really well done, and the production's great. And like yourself, I am of an age where like I was starting to get into my heavy listening of kind of metal. Very late 90s, very early 2000s was when I was kind of like really starting to understand why I like this music and the component parts. And they are throwing so much of that kind of, as they say in South Park, the member berries. Remember this? They're throwing so many member berries at me that I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. And it's not easy to take those kind of Every Time I Die sounds and just fling them into songs. I credit that band as sounding remarkably different from everyone else, and they managed to distill certain elements and bring it in. You will not hear another album this month that sounds remotely like Wounded Touch. You just won't. They've definitely crafted something that makes them memorable. I just think at times just a little refinement, just a little tweak here, a little tweak there, for my personal taste. Not like clearly nothing to do with the band. Like I'm always going to want a little bit more melody because I like that. But it's fucking fierce. This is like one of those albums from like kind of when in 1984, they like there was that famous speech about basically standing on the necks of people. That's his album. This album stands on your neck for 26 minutes until you're finished listening to it, then lets you get up. It's different.
Kyle?
It's been a Kyle.
If I've already been, then you can just skip right over me.
You're younger than us, so I don't know how much nostalgia you have. I don't know how much nostalgia you have for. Like, you were in your emo phase when we were in our new wave of American heavy metal phase. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. I never went through an emo phase.
Did you not?
No.
Right. Well, let's talk
about
this album.
Whiny bitches should shut the fuck up and get on with it. Make some new metal. Come on.
This is true. New metal. What did you think of Wounded Touch?
You know what? I think I'm in the minority here.
I knew you weren't going to like this.
I didn't really like it that much.
I was waiting on it.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate what they're trying to do, but I didn't enjoy the vocal at all. I heard it at the beginning, and it was like, fair enough, you're doing that, and then it was a lot of it, and I was like, oh, this is hard for me to listen to. I just didn't get on with it. I don't know why. It's just too screechy and just too much of it. And I think what they're going for is like very chaotic. But there's like, I think is lacking an element of control in there too, because like chaos is great if it's controlled chaos. If it's just too chaos, then it's just all chaos, and then it gets a bit one trick pony like. And I felt like all the way through I was like, okay, it's more chaos. Okay, it kept me guessing. I will give them that. But it just was like, I don't know where you're going, and I'm not sure what you want to be. And it all just sort of started to sound a bit samey towards the end of the album, and I was like, yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's clearly just not for me, they're doing very well with what they do. The production is great, and they're playing it very well, and I can really appreciate the range of what the vocalist can do and everything. It's just not for me. I was just by the end of it, I was like, you know what, I didn't really get on with that, but it's not like they're crap. It's just not my thing. So, okay. I mean, It might well have played better for me if I had the whole nostalgia thing going on, but I don't really with metalcore. Metalcore's not my first genre, let me put it that way. Because a lot of the stuff sounds the same, and that's probably why I hopped off it pretty quick. So, yeah. But no, I mean, they're very good at what they do. It's just not my thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Ratings for Wounded Touch, AMERICANXIETY. Yeah, this was right up my street. I quite like the whole kind of like chaos to it. It is very intense, it is very extreme, but I think at 26 minutes they get away with it. I think if that album length had started to push into like the 35-40 minutes, okay, fair enough, it'd have been too much. And you know, those little splashes of melody were kind of just enough to kind of break me out of it every now and again as well. I'd like a little bit more, just maybe even just on a couple more tracks throughout the album, because they're so good at it as well. It's like you've got that there and you're really good at it. I'd like to hear it just a touch more. But I still see myself going back to this. I did really enjoy it. I obviously like that kind of style, that sound from that era as well. So it works for me. I'd probably go 4 out of 5. I enjoyed this one. Duncan?
Slightly lower, but not much. 3.5 for me. I think there's enough on here to make me want to go back and check them out and check further releases from them. I think it's the sort of album that it's a frame of mind album as well. I need to be in a particular frame of mind to listen to this, just because I felt on edge all the way through it. Which, I mean, it's what I'm saying. It's named perfectly. The album's name is absolutely perfect, and it does make you feel anxious while listening to it, which credit to them, because there's many bands that try that and fail horribly. I like this. I like this quite a bit, but like I say, a couple of things that maybe just didn't gel with me as much as I would like. But I'm a selfish lover, Dave. 3.5.
I'm an easy lover. That's what I give it for.
Easy lover.
Kyle, what do you think?
Just imagining you two go to a bar with easy lover, selfish lover.
We've done that before. I won't tell you how it ended.
I bet it ended with the ball in your court.
You didn't mention a name, so we'll leave it there.
I'm going to come in marginally lower than Duncan at 3 out of 5 because it's just not my thing. So,
okay, fair enough. So this one drops on March 4th on Smartpunk Reocrds. I'll put some links below to the band's Facebook and to the pre-orders and stuff, so you can check out. Let us know what you think. Once you've heard some of the tracks, heard the album, stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak decent.
Bye, everyone.